there today to talk to all of you. So let's go.
What up, y'all? KD here. Really excited to be a part of RevCon this year and to dive into this idea of the future of sales, right? Where are things going? Because the better we are able to predict and adapt, the more set up we will be. So I'm gonna give this a go. I'm not feeling 100% right now, y'all, but I didn't want to miss out on this. So I wanted to make sure that we had a chance to dive into this idea of the future of sales, because if we can nail this, we can start making the changes we need to now to set us up for a better future. So let's dive in here. I'm going to share my screen and we will rock this. All right. So the future of sales. And you can see there's an asterisk on there for a reason, because can we really predict the future? No, but I'm going to give you the best bet of what I believe is going to occur over the next 5 to 10 years in our industry. So hopefully you leave some ideas on what to do about it. Right. So now we think about predicting the future, right? Can you? Can you really predict the future, right? With a whole bunch of certainty? If we could, we'd all either be billionaires or everything wouldn't be the issues that they are right now if we could predict it, right? So, but yes and no in terms of predicting the future, right? Because does history repeat itself often? Think about this for a second. Does history repeat itself often? It does. And so if you know that, you can sometimes take a look and go, okay, this has happened before. Maybe it will happen again. So we can predict a little bit. But also, are there black swan events? All right. So those of you not familiar with black swan, right? Black swan is like it comes out of nowhere. Everybody thought swans were white until they found a black one. There was nothing to predict. There was nothing to even imply that a black swan would exist. All of a sudden, it was just there. So similarly, right, things just pop up out of nowhere that can throw off our perceptions of what's happening, okay? Right? But interesting enough, predicting the future actually isn't that hard when you really pay attention to things, right? It's predicting when it will occur that is hard. So for example, all of y'all probably have some ideas on some things you think will happen in the future, whether that is things around AI, whether that is flying cars, living on Mars, right? So think about it this way. How many of y'all think we will eventually live on Mars? I think there's a high likelihood, right? But it's when. So technically, we're predicting the future. We will colonize Mars. We just don't know when we will. Artificial intelligence will continue to replace certain roles. We just don't know when it will. Automated cars, we just don't know when it will, right? And so predicting the future, if you think about it, all like the soothsayers of the past and everyone that's ever tried to predict, oftentimes they've actually been right. They just got the when wrong. And so that's the key to remember with predicting the future. It's not always about what will happen. I think a lot of us actually have some ideas on what will happen in the future of sales. It's when and being ready for when it actually occurs. So let's talk about Moore's Law here real quick as we talk about the future, because obviously technology is a huge part of our lives. And you can see here on the image, right? So the idea behind Moore's Law is basically every 2 years, technology's capacities double. Right? It's gotten a little bit different over the last like 4 years because things are accelerating so quickly. But like, look at this image. 2005, 128 megabytes. 2014, 128 gigabytes. And if you look at the thumb drives now, you have terabytes on this size. Every 2 years, just doubling in terms of capacity. So if you think about where technology is now, look at it. What do tools do now? Where is technology now? Think about what 5 years from now means in terms of how much further along the technology will be. So like obviously right now, like you see things dabbling like with auto driving, like with the Teslas. That's now. Can you imagine 5 years from now as it gets doubly better and doubly better in this period of time? Let this sink in for a second, because this is important, right? Because oftentimes we look at how things are now and we forget how quickly that continues to accelerate. Think about your phone. Think about your phone, right? The capacity it has now compared to 2 years ago, compared to 4 years ago, compared to 8 years ago. Think about your phone 8 years ago to what it is now. That's how technology is moving, and we need to realize this, right? So think about some of the things that AI is already doing. That's very important because this is a space, especially in sales, and trust me, I'm gonna go into this where we talk about AI replacing us or not. And everyone's like, no, impossible. Are you sure? Do you know what AI is actually doing right now already? Do you know there's actually AI teachers out there right now? There's AI therapists out there right now. That's now. That Google released this. This was now 2 years ago. They showed a clip of their like AI booking calls, right? Setting appointments like for a salon and for, I think it was for a theater. That was 2 years ago. Imagine what that can do in 2 more years, 5 more years around technology. So we need to know this. Now, one caveat I did want to put out here, I've actually spent a lot of time diving into this. This is not me just sitting in like my little office corner here thinking like, here's what I think. Like I've spent a lot of time reading on what is technology doing? How is it transpiring? Because there's so much that we don't even know is happening in our own little bubble. So I did want to give you some of my favorite reads around this so that you can start educating yourself as well. This is not me and just my opinion. This is me reading a lot on this and then looking at my space and then creating an opinion around it, right? So The Inevitable by Kevin Kelly is a great read. Humans Need Not Apply, which is also a great read compared to Only Humans Need Apply. The Future of Artificial Intelligence and Scary Smart. These are some of my favorite reads around how technology is shaping, shifting, and how technology is starting to create technology, right? And how it's able to connect things together that we've never seen before, right? So things around this, I would encourage y'all to really start educating yourself on what technology is doing outside of our space, right? What is technology doing in terms of nature and food and healthcare? All of those things are so important to know as we predict on where things are going. So definitely give some of these a read. They are very interesting and they might even scare you a little bit, okay? So now here's what you got to ask, right? So anyone attending a webinar on predicting the future, you have to ask yourself, are you willing to change and adapt? Because if we don't change and adapt, what happens in the future actually doesn't even matter. It doesn't make any difference, right? So the key to all of this is actually being open-minded. I might put some things out in front of you today. You're like, dude, Katie, no, that's ridiculous. That will never happen. But what if it did? What if it did? Would you be prepared for it? Are you willing to change your way of thinking? Because if you're not willing to change, if you're not willing to adapt, then honestly, the future doesn't matter because you're still going to be doing the same things you are now, just getting worse results, right? We all know that silly analogy, right? Where they say, if you throw a frog into a pot of boiling water, it jumps out right away. But if you heat up the water around it, it doesn't notice until it's too late. I've actually disproven that, and I'm sorry for the gruesome imagery, but you get my point here. I truly believe for a lot of us in sales, we are in that boiling water moment right now where things are changing very quickly around us, but we're sitting in it and we don't notice it as much. Whereas if we jumped out for a second and took a broader look at how things are changing on a micro and macro level, we'd be more willing to admit some things are going to change, right? Because this is something we always say we're adaptive. We always say we're willing to change, but y'all know this, right? Like I get to speak with leaders and reps all the time, all the time. It's my job right now, right? I coach leaders and orgs on how to run a business, how to do sales the right way. And it's still shocking to me how many people will not be happy with the results, but still not be willing to change. Well, I don't want to do that. That won't work. It's like, okay, then fine. But these are the things you have to think about, right? Are you willing to change things that you've always done? Because if you're not, again, the future doesn't matter. You can jump off this webinar right now, just go back to doing what you're doing. But if you're trying to adapt for the future, some things are going to have to change. So now this is something to think about, okay? One of the best interviews literally ever, in my opinion, around this topic came from Jeff Bezos. And I will send a clip out to everybody afterwards. I thought about playing it. There's just not enough time for it right now. But basically, the interviewer asked, how do you innovate so well? Like, how do you predict the future? Like, how do you know, like, how to stay ahead of things over the next 9 to 10 years? And the way Bezos answered this question was gold. The way he answered it was, well, when we are trying to innovate or trying to predict the future, a better question is, what won't change? what won't change over the next 4 to 5 years? And that's where we focus because we can predict that. And so paying attention to things like what won't change, right? Because if you want to predict the future, focus on what won't change first. Then you can think about what will change. But what do you believe that is stable now will still be stable later? And some of the examples that he gave in this interview, he's like, I don't see a world where Amazon customers want things to be more expensive. Hey, Jeff, everything's great. Yeah, we love it. We just wish the products were more expensive. He's like, I don't see a world where Amazon customers want things to get there slower. I don't see a world where Amazon customers will want less selection or to trust the product less. So notice if you think about their innovations, they focus on innovating on things that won't change. How can they drive price lower? How can they verify trust of the employees or of the customers with reviews? How can they make sure they have a full product selection? How can they get it to you faster? That's where they're innovating based off what you as a buyer wants, and then innovating on the things that will not change. So answering this question is actually a better way to prepare for the future in terms of what won't change. Taking some time to think about this is key. And I'm going to give y'all some examples here as we go through this, right? So if you think about at a high level, what are things that won't change? Well, people overall are not going to change that much in terms of like how we make decisions and how our brain works, right? So understanding human psychology, right? That's pretty wired right now. We have preferences, but how we make decisions, right? Emotionally before logically, that is how our brains work, right? How we label things, how we need to understand things, how we connect the dots between things, how we compare things, that won't change. So it's making sure you're ready for that. Pricing. Are people going to want to pay more for a product or less? We know they're going to want to pay less. So it's knowing that and thinking about that. Ease, right? Can you picture a world where a buyer's like, you know what? That was actually too easy. I really wish it was harder to implement your product, or I really wish it was harder to get set up, or I really wish it was harder to buy. Right? We know people want ease. This is going to continue. And also speaking to my leaders, this is something to remember too about your people. If you're leading an org, what won't change? Well, are people going to want to make more or less? Are people going to want to work more or less? Are people going to want more flexibility or less? We know what those things are. That won't change. So you adapt to those things. Speed. People want to get things done and want to get them done faster. Your customer's customer is what you want to answer this for as well. If you're selling to a certain customer, their customers. Sorry, that's my dog. 1 second, y'all. 1 second. Well, at least you know I'm filming this right now. So thank you, Goat, for protecting me from the super dangerous. Yes, my dog's name is Goat, and he's protecting me from the dangerous Amazon man. Anyway, what won't change? Your customer's customer, right? What do you know about them that won't change that will help you help your customer more, right? So these are the things that you need to be paying attention to. So let's get here. Have you really ever asked yourself this question? What do customers want? What do prospects want? Because this will help us adapt sales for the future. So first one, customers want to try the product. Prospects want to try the product. We know this. Can you envision a world where a prospect goes, nope, 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 I don't want to try it. Just implement it for me. I have zero interest in making sure it will work for me. Right? You know this. So what are we already seeing popping up? PLG, product-led growth. Why? Because the prospect wants to try the product. We know this. We know they want to. So if you know this, this will help you innovate. Because think about it this way. I'll reword it. Company A, company B are going head to head. Same product, same price point. One product you get to try, the other one you don't. Who do you think the customer picks? The one that they can try, right? So it's knowing this. That's why you're seeing PLG pop up, right? This is where live demos, sandboxes are showing up. What do prospects want? They want to be able to trust that the product works. This is where you're starting to see CLG popping up. And I'm going to talk about this one a little bit more, but you have community-led growth and customer-led growth. Okay, let's be honest, y'all. Do prospects want to talk to salespeople? They don't. If you know that, it changes who you have them talk to. They want to talk to their peers. They want to talk to users. They want to talk to customers. They want to talk to people that have actually used the product. Most salespeople, funny enough, sell products they don't use. Some of y'all get to sell products to salespeople, which is great. But the vast majority of us, we're selling products we don't even use. So how can we ever really communicate to that level? So you know customers want this. How are you adapting? Safer terms. We're seeing this come up more, right? This is why you're seeing more month to month show up right there, because who wants to commit to a product that they don't know will work, that they didn't get to try for over 2 years up front? That's a harder thing. And also, too, you think about how buying's changed. Same idea, right? Making sure that they have good terms, right? They want guarantees in there. Transparent pricing. We know this, y'all. And as much as we in sales don't like this, we don't want to just put the price up there. That's what the prospect wants. So if you are able to admit that and willing to adapt there, it's going to change how things run in the future, putting these things on the website. Easily customizable. This is a big one as well. Custom software versus platform. I do think you're actually going to start seeing more custom cloud products than these platforms, right? Because it used to be on-site, right? It came on-site, but then it was custom on-site. Now we've moved to platform in the cloud, right? It's in the cloud, but everyone kind of has the same tool. I think it starts to shift a little bit more back to customized cloud-based products to our use case, how they want to use it, and having more customization being available because that's what customers want. And sellers, you know this. How many times do you have a deal online and then someone's like, well, I would buy if you could do this. If you had this feature, I would. That's where I think the easy customization is going to have to play a big role in this, right? And the results versus usage is a big one. Customers want results. They don't want usage. The amount of times I've heard from like my CS rep, like, hey, your utilization's great. I don't care about my utilization. I care about the results. So now let's talk about the things that will change. The generation of the buyer is continuing to change. More and more of the buyers are millennial, Gen Y, and eventually will be Gen Z as well in terms of the generation of the buyer. That will change. Okay. So how well do you understand the generational differences and preferences in terms of how they like to buy? Another thing that a lot of salespeople don't read on, consumer psychology. How is Gen Z as a consumer different than millennial as a consumer? Do you know? You might want to research that. Example, Gen Z relies significantly more on video for reviews than millennial that prefers written text for reviews. Interesting to know. Might be something you want to adapt around, right? The setup of the company. Are they remote or in person? This is also something I don't think it gets talked about enough. It's harder to buy remotely too. It might be tougher to sell remotely. That's up for debate, but it's harder to buy remotely, right? When I was still leading my org of over 150 people and I wanted to buy something, you know how hard it was to coordinate all these remote meetings and you don't know the time zone people are in, and it's hard to get that real connection on why you do things because you don't have those same water cooler conversations. By the way, sellers, that's where a lot of selling happens, is the water cooler after the demo, where me and my directors are talking about it. Whereas when it's a Zoom call, it just ends. So the setup of the company, that's changing. How does that affect buying? Technology. This is one of my personal favorites, right? Anytime that sellers are like, no, like AI will never replace us. What if it replaces the buyer? What happens when you're pitching to a black box? What happens when there is a tool, which by the way, there will be eventually a tool that will listen to all of the demos and determine which product is best? Listens to all the demos, goes through all the feature sets, goes through all the tech specs, goes through all the API, goes through all the reviews, all the communities, and then determines and just suggests, hey, KD, here's the tool for you. How are you selling against that if you aren't also enabled with technology, right? Because the buyer is getting more and more technology behind them as well. And your customers will continue to change. This is making sure generationally in focus, like we talked about, that you're aware of this. Another big thing for predicting the future, trends, macro and micro trends. What's going on at a global level? What's going on at a micro level? What are the economic trends right now? What directions are things going? What are the political trends right now? What are the sociological trends right now? How are people living? What are they doing differently, right? where there are trends and how long have they been going that way. Because if something is trending this way and it has been trending this way for 7, 8 years, you think all of a sudden that changes? That's where the trend is going. So you know where things are going. So let's use this one, political. Are we getting more unified or more divided? How long has that trend been going? So understanding that trend actually allows you to better predict what will happen down the road, because that trend is going to need a reversal in some way, and that takes time, right? The win factor is what that helps us figure out, is what are those trends? So even short-term economic trends right now are not great. They're not great. Okay. So trying to predict next year and thinking everything's going to be fine again when things have been trending a certain way for 12 months, 14 months, that's not predicting the future the right way, because we're ignoring the trends. So if you're trying to predict what will happen, what are the trends at a macro level? What are the economical trends? What are the sociological trends, political trends, but also micro? Look within your industry. What are the industry trends right now to who you sell to? What are the industry trends for their customers? What are they seeing right now, right? So paying attention to trends helps you predict the future, right? The longer the trend, the harder it is to reverse. So what are you noticing? Are you paying attention? Have you even Googled that? Have you ever even Googled SaaS sales trends if you sell to SaaS sales? Have you Googled cloud trends, right? VC trends, whatever it is, you need to know how things are trending. So let's talk about what must change, okay? Sales skills, we got to level up here, y'all. We do. We have to get better here. We are still not focusing on skill development for most of our sales orgs. It's all just go, work hard, figure it out. We have to focus on developing skills, industry knowledge. We actually need to know our industry better in sales, right? And I have been a buyer as well. So I know, right? I'm a sales leader, and it's shocking to me how most sales reps selling to a sales leader don't really know the sales industry in terms of what it means to be a VP. What are those trends, right? Consolidation. I think you're going to continue to see this. There are so many tools out there. And what's happened to productivity? Has it gotten better? I don't think so. More and more people are missing quota on a regular basis now, and we have all of these tools. I think we're going to see a consolidation of tools on what really matters and drives impacts. I also think compensation and org structures are going to continue to change because it's not working. You can't build a variable comp plan if only 40% of people are getting there. That means the comp plan is broken, right? And then supports and systems. This is a big one for me. Y'all, probably know or follow me around some of this stuff, but like giving sales orgs more support around this side of things, right? The mental side of things, that mental game of sales, giving more support and systems around that must change, because if it doesn't, things will continue to go the way that they are right now. So now let's talk about the future of sales, marketing, RevOps, and CS. This is my prediction. It's all being recorded, so we'll see what happens down the road. But first, I do believe PLG continues to gain more and more traction. I think more and more companies are going to have some sort of product-led arm so that allows customers to easily get their hands on the product to try it. I truly believe CLG becomes the future, customer-led growth. I've been able to dabble with this. I've tested this myself, getting customers involved early, getting customers on demos, paying customers to be in that true advisory board, not just like the board of advisors where you ask them for stuff, but actually paying them to be on these demos. I think customer-led growth is the future, where more and more customers are leading this charge here. I think sales becomes more how experts. Think about SEs a little bit, think about CS a little bit, where it's less and less about selling the product, and it's more and more on making sure that they know how to use it and can implement it and see results from the product. So I think sales becomes more how experts. So it turns into sales guidance versus a sales process, right? The medic, the med pick, the band, all of that, I think goes away, because if I'm a buyer, I'm into the product now. And the product has to earn the budget. The product has to earn the need. The product has to earn the timing, right? So I think sales starts to guide the prospect through this journey, through the buying process, through the implementation process, versus this standard sales process to then at the very end, try the product there. I think you see less and less variable comp splits. I do. And I know this one riles people up, but I think it starts to turn more and more base heavy and less of this 50-50 split. One, because I don't know if we can keep people in the industry. If people are on 50-50 split and they're never getting to their quota, they're going to leave the industry, right? Versus if that security was there, it's like, here's your job. Go do it and do it well. There are other industries that have already done this with their sales orgs where now there is no commission and buyers trust them more. If I know that about a buyer, I think this is part of the future. I do think you start to see freelance sellers pop up more where they know an industry well and basically they're on retainer for 3 or 4 different companies just to work their big deals or just to work their strategic accounts because they are good at what they do in that industry. They know the persona well. You can learn the product, but they know the persona very well. So I think you start to see freelance sellers and then maybe even freelance sales dev where it's like, I'm a great prospector. That's what I do. I will prospect for multiple companies at once and make a good living doing it. Land and expand, right? Again, with PLG, it's getting in smaller pieces. I also think these big enterprise companies, less and less, are rolling out these full sweeping changes. They want to try with one org, then to the next org, then to the next org, and PLG fits in very tightly with that. I do think down the road, sales dev flips the AE org in terms of value and compensation. Right, as AE orgs turn more into sales guidance, right, with the product-led arm, I think getting in continues to be the harder and harder part. And I think we start to see that shift where you have veteran SDRs making 200K a year because they're able to crack into the Fortune 100 or the Fortune 500. They're able to set 20, 30 appointments in a month and paying for that because if we can get people in the product, the revenue comes. And I do think outbound becomes more around outbound education than meeting setting. Look, y'all, let's look at trends. What's the trend on connect rates right now? Going down and has been going down for a long time. Is that going to change in the next 3 to 5 years? I don't think so. Response rates are coming down. Open rates and click rates are kind of maintaining, but response rates are coming down. So I believe that the outbound arm starts to become way more educational. Hey, I just wanted to share this with you. I just wanted to share some insights, some trends with you. And there's no ask, there's no meetings, because again, the goal is to get them into the product. So also leading with trials is another thing that I think starts to happen, where you're not trying to get an appointment, you're trying to get a trial and getting them into the product. So this is what I believe the future of sales looks like. Will it happen? I don't know. Because this is another part of it. More data over gut. Sales historically has been very gut and instinct driven, right? That's not the way anymore. Sales reps and leaders that understand data will win, period. If you don't understand the data of your org, your industry, and your company, you will lose to someone who does know the data because they'll know what levers to focus on, where to pull, how to pivot, what levers to pull, and how to pull them. Because this is also what's funny is we'll look at some data and go, ooh, close rates are low. Okay, well, how do you improve close rates? A lot of leaders actually don't know. They just say, we need to improve close rates. And it doesn't work that way, right? You need to understand how to improve the data, right? So that's my personal methodology on leadership is behind the results are the metrics. Behind the metrics is the BPS, behavior, process, or skill. If you want to improve close rate, you got to improve a behavior, you got to improve a process, or you got to improve a skill, if not all 3 of them. And that's what I've built my teams around over the last 7, 8 years, this idea of BPS. We don't talk about results. We talk about metrics, behaviors, process, and skill. And that's what I'm working with companies, teaching them how to do that, right? Now it's like the future of marketing, more and more integrated into the product. Then you start to see marketing in the product more, right? Getting to that next step, selling them on the next step, educating them on the next step, case studies about the product when they are in it. I think you see more cross-product marketing, right? Like who could advertise across our product? That would be a great joint venture, right? So I think you start to see cross-product marketing, true influencer and brand work. So not just dabbling for a post here or there, but like truly paying influencers to be there, to promote, to speak for, to educate the market about not just the product, but how to use it and get the results from it. So I do think this continues, but people start to do it for real, right? There's a reason why Nike pays LeBron hundreds of millions of dollars because that brand generates all of that back. There are those types of personalities, and it's not just the LinkedIn influencers that have brands. There's people that have respect in industries. They may not be big on LinkedIn, but dang it, you put them on a call with a bunch of prospective customers and they go, yes, I want what they have. So I think this becomes big again. More of a focus on dark social, because this is real, y'all. We're like, by the time someone does a direct search for your product, You don't think they've already looked you up or spoken to somebody? So figuring out how to really do this dark social, how do you amplify referrals? How do you get customers talk about you more, aka intentional word of mouth marketing? We all know it exists, but not a lot of people talk about how to do it the right way. Okay. I think events start to become smaller and more tailored, right? Face to face is still amazing. But what's happening, and y'all are seeing this again as a trend, some of y'all might even know this. Some of y'all went to SaaStr and Dreamforce, but didn't go to SaaStr and Dreamforce. You went to the city it was in, but you didn't buy a ticket. You went just to be around it all, right? So you were just around the conference, but you didn't go for the speakers. You went for the networking. So I think marketing starts to become more focused purely on the networking and less on having all these different speakers and making it more tailored to the audience, more customer focused marketing as well. Why is marketing always on the front? We got to be marketing to our customers too to help them grow and expand. Then we get into RevOps, right? The future of RevOps. Less data. And I know this might shock some people, but I think RevOps pulls back a little bit in terms of the amount of data and more on insights. I used to talk about this with my RevOps team all the time. I don't want the data. I want the diamonds in the data. Okay. Don't tell me what it is. Tell me what the trend is, what you're seeing. Why is the data what it is? And in real time adjustments on territories, quotas, compensation. Again, we talked about custom software. All territories are not the same. So let's stop treating them like they are, right? Not all leads are the same. Let's stop treating them like they are. I think you start to see more real time adjustments of like based off lead flow, macro trends, and what we're targeting. This is the adjustment that we're making to a plan. RevOps is going to help with the consolidation of tools as well. And more enablement, less ops, right? Meaning not just suggesting based off the data, we should double quotas next year. No. That's not how it always works in the spreadsheet, y'all. It always works in the spreadsheet. It's more so based off what we're seeing. This is where we need to enable our people. These are the tools that can do that for them and working through that process. So let's just ops where it's like, oh, based off the data, this is what we need to do. Is getting more into here's how we can actually accomplish that. And then we get into customer success. Okay. I think more operators and less support. If we're honest, a lot of CS orgs do run as a support org, not a success org. You need to be an operator in success, meaning understanding that product to the T to make sure that the customer is getting value from it. Comped on impact, not churn. I think this is a shift that we see because churn comes from lack of impact. So I don't want to pay someone on churn. I want to pay them on impact. And if I can measure the impact of the customer, the sooner they get impact, the amount of impact they get, that's what I want to pay CS on. It's not churn a year later. I want impact by 6 months, right? I want onboarded by 3, right? So focusing on the impact. True industry experts. I do think you see this trend happen, especially in CS, where you start to go get customers and people are hiring them in. Who's used your product? There is nobody better to be a success rep than someone who used the product before. I do think CS starts to get involved way earlier with sales, especially in a product-led motion, because they have to be involved to help implement, to put the tools in to get that impact set up the right way. And I do think CS starts to get more like, call it like tools and support. Right? CS kind of just been put on this island, right? This is where all the revenue actually starts to come back in, right? This is where you get your valuations from and everything. They don't get nearly the training, nearly the tools, nearly the support that the sales org tends to. I think you start to see that shift again over time because this is also the trend of where do we make our money in SaaS? In the renewal, in the expansion. Because if your people aren't renewing or expanding, it doesn't matter how many new customers you're bringing in. But CS is never really treated that way. That's why Winning by Design just came out with the CS operating guide, because this is where people are missing. They've been so focused on new bookings that they forget that they got to keep them and expand them and get a true expansion focus, right? True expansion based off of what you're doing and how you're doing it. Here's how you should grow with us as a company. And then real quick, let's talk about the buyer, right? Buyers, they want to try before they buy. Users are getting more involved in the buying process, right? The CEO isn't using the sales engagement tool. The CFO isn't using it. The CRO isn't using it. An AE is, an SDR is. And I think you're going to see more and more product-led expansion, right? From users making purchases and then going from there. More flexible terms, right? They don't want these 2 years pay in full type nonsense. They're going to want month-to-month contracts, easy outs. expert hand-holding support. Like, not let's get you onboarded, but like, I want to talk to another VP who put this all together and how they got the results they were looking for. The example I've always given, if you think about, Groove, Apollo, SalesLoft, Outreach, the CS reps there should be amazing copywriters, right? Because those tools are using email, right? The CS rep should be able to look at the forecast and go, ooh, I can tell where you're going to miss. That's what I mean around operators on the CS side, is that they understand the world of their user. Access to communities and info to back channel. Y'all, I can't tell you how much this happens, right? Where people are jumping in Pavilion and they say, hey, what do you know about this product? Or I'm looking for a product like this, right? Or they send the email out in Modern Sales Pros, right? And it comes out. This is how the buyer is starting to ask questions around things. So pay attention to how you buy things right now. That'll help you predict how the buyer will change, okay? So as we wrap on this, I wanted to touch on this, right? The future is unknown. We don't know, right? But we're in this together, y'all. We are in this together. And I don't know that we all feel that way right now in terms of, are we in it together? Are we fighting each other over nothing, right? We need to support each other, learn from each other, live better to sell better. So I got it on the big old board behind me here. Live better, sell better, right? If we focus on what we're doing day to day that is in our control, we can help create that future. This is actually one of my favorite recent books I've read, like Be Your Future Self Now. Think about who you want to be in the future. Start taking care of that person now, and it will create the future that you are looking for. So to recap here, y'all, think about what won't change. Think about the trends now and where momentum is going. Step out for a second and look. What are you seeing? Get out of the pot for a second. What do you see around you? How are things going, right? Take an opposite approach. What if you are wrong, right? What if AI does replace salespeople? Well, then what? At least take the opposite approach and go, well, then what would I do? How could I take advantage of that? Because I do think that will happen, y'all. I do. Right? Sales is nothing but a very, very long if-then chain, and you can map a lot of that out, right? Those are things that can occur, right? The buyer is changing as well. So that means we should be too. So appreciate y'all. I'm so glad you went through this. I hope I gave you some ideas. I hope maybe I triggered some thoughts, some wondering on, okay, where are things going and how can I better prepare for it now? But appreciate y'all. Live better, sell better. KD, we're out.